After my husband caught me cheating with my boss, 8 years have passed. Subscribe for more Watching Stories videos. 8 years ago, my life took a sharp turn into chaos. It was the night my husband, Tom, discovered my affair with my boss, David. It wasn't a chance discovery. Tom had become suspicious over time. The late nights at the office, the sudden business trips, the distance that had crept into our marriage. It all added up. But nothing could have prepared me for the look on his face when he confronted me with the truth. The affair hadn't been some long-standing love story. It had been a series of bad decisions made during a rough patch in our marriage. I had been at the company for 5 years, and David was charismatic, successful, and seemed to understand my frustrations at home in a way that Tom hadn't. What started as harmless conversations escalated into something much more. I knew it was wrong, but there was a thrill in the secrecy that I convinced myself was worth the risk. I was wrong. That night, Tom found the emails. Explicit, undeniable evidence of my betrayal. I didn't deny it. There was no use. The hurt on his face, the anger, the disbelief, it was all too much to process at once. He left the house immediately and didn't come back for 2 days. Those were the longest 2 days of my life. When he returned, it was to pack a bag and leave again. This time, for good. For the first few months, everything was a blur. I took a leave of absence from work because I couldn't face David. The thought of walking into that office and pretending that everything was normal was impossible. Tom filed for divorce quickly and I didn't contest it. I had broken our marriage and there was no undoing the damage. I moved out of our home and into a small apartment across town. It was the kind of place where no one knew my name, and for the first time in a long time, I preferred it that way. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. We didn't have children, which made the legalities more straightforward, but emotionally, it was as complicated as it could get. Our families had known each other for years, and the fallout affected more than just the two of us. Friends took sides. Some didn't take any side at all and simply drifted away. The loneliness was suffocating, but I knew I had brought it on myself. I eventually went back to work, though I resigned from my job at David's company. I couldn't stand the whispers in the office or the way my colleagues looked at me with pity or judgment. I found a new job at a smaller firm where no one knew my past. It was a fresh start, but the shame and regret were still there, lurking beneath the surface. I threw myself into work as a way to keep my mind occupied, but there was no escaping the fact that I had lost everything that truly mattered. Over the next couple of years, I tried to piece my life back together. I went to therapy to understand why I had made the choices I did, and why I had risked my marriage for something so meaningless. It wasn't just about the affair, it was about the issues that had built up long before David entered the picture. I had to come to terms with the fact that I hadn't communicated my feelings to Tom, hadn't worked with him to address the problems in our marriage. Instead, I had taken the easy way out, searching for a solution in all the wrong places. Meanwhile, Tom had moved on, at least from what I could gather through mutual friends. He started dating again about a year after the divorce and eventually met someone serious. Her name was Emily, and she was nothing like me, kind, grounded, and genuine. I heard they were happy together, and a part of me was glad that he had found someone who could give him the stability I hadn't. 3 years after the divorce, I ran into Tom at a friend's wedding. It was the first time we had seen each other since everything had happened. We exchanged polite greetings, but there was a distance between us that felt insurmountable. I could see the remnants of pain in his eyes, and I felt the guilt come rushing back. I didn't know if he would ever be able to forgive me, or if I could ever forgive myself. As time passed, I continued therapy and worked on rebuilding my life. I joined a support group for people who had experienced infidelity in their relationships, both as victims and as perpetrators. It was eye-opening to hear stories from others who had gone through similar experiences, and it helped me gain a deeper understanding of the impact of my actions. I realized that the affair hadn't just hurt Tom, it had hurt me as well. It had distorted my view of myself and my worth, and I needed to confront that. By the 5th year after the divorce, I had finally reached a place where I felt some sense of peace. I had started a small business with a friend from my new job, something I had always dreamed of doing but never had the courage to pursue. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something meaningful again. It wasn't a replacement for the life I had lost, but it was a new chapter, and that was something. Around this time, I heard that Tom had gotten engaged to Emily. When I saw the pictures on social media, I felt a mix of emotions. There was a part of me that was happy for him, knowing he deserved all the love and happiness in the world. But there was also a part of me that felt the weight of what I had lost. A life that could have been mine if only I had been stronger, more honest, and less selfish. 8 years have now passed since that fateful night. Tom and Emily are married, and they recently had their first child. I sent a card when I heard the news, congratulating them and wishing them all the best. I wasn't expecting a response, but to my surprise, Tom reached out a few weeks later. He thanked me for the card and asked if I'd be open to meeting for coffee. He said there were things he wanted to talk about, not for the sake of rekindling anything, but for closure. When we met, it was like seeing an old friend after a long time, but with a strange sense of familiarity and distance. We spoke about our lives, where we had ended up, and how we had changed. Tom told me that while he had been deeply hurt by the affair, he had also come to realize that we had both contributed to the breakdown of our marriage. He had his own regrets about not being more attentive, not seeing the signs that something was wrong, and taking our relationship for granted. It didn't make my actions any less wrong, but it helped to hear that he no longer viewed me as the villain in the story. He told me that he had forgiven me, not for my sake, but for his own peace. He said it took years to get there, but he had realized that holding on to anger wasn't helping him. He had a new life, a new family, and he needed to let go of the past to fully embrace his future. We parted ways with a mutual understanding that we had both grown from the experience. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no rekindling of old flames. Instead, there was a quiet acknowledgement that we had shared a part of our lives together, and that chapter had ended. Today, I continue to run my business, which has grown beyond my expectations. I've started dating again, though I'm more careful and conscious about what I want and need in a relationship. I know now that true happiness isn't found in fleeting excitement or distractions, but in the quiet, steady work of building a life you can be proud of. The affair was the most painful mistake I ever made, but it taught me more about myself than I ever could have imagined. I'm not the same person I was 8 years ago, and for that, I'm grateful. I've learned how to be honest with myself, how to face my flaws, and how to strive for a better version of who I am. The past can't be changed, and I'll always carry the weight of my choices. But as the years go by, that weight becomes a little easier to bear. I've come to realize that while I lost my marriage, I found something else, myself. And sometimes, that's the hardest and most valuable discovery of all. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like, comment.